Hi, I'm Deborah Alden. Hi, Adib.
Hi,
I'd love to
Deborah.
start I'd love to start a conversation with just some context. So can you share with us a little about your background and what drives you personally?
So I studied architecture in Lebanon, and then I went on to study design and technology in New York. And after that, I went into living systems, and I actually studied biomimicry in Arizona. And so this was kind of like my moving away from the strict, let's say, boundaries of the architecture profession per se. So basically, so once I'd finished my graduate degree in 2011, I moved back to Lebanon with the intention uh, actually to start my own firm, which is called theOtherDada. And basically, I mean, even the choice of the name was because it kind of set the tone for something alternative. So it's an alternative to the conventional architecture, alternative to the conventional approach to projects, and also kind of an alternative to the term sustainability. So, you know, we're not about just sustaining, you know, the status quo. Like that's not something that's good. So basically, I mean, and this is why I studied living systems and biomimicry. It's always kind of looking what's beyond sustainability. And so after, you know, after studying biomimicry, like it really became apparent that nature uh, is the ultimate mentor. Nature has developed organisms over billions of years that have faced many of the challenges that we are facing today, and they have developed really elegant and regenerative solutions to their problems. And so basically, there's a lot that we can learn from, and that we should learn from before more and more of our biodiversity goes extinct. So this leads us kind of like to the regenerative aspect of the work. So it's really thinking of our projects more as a part of an ecosystem, as opposed to being just like a building or, you know, an object in space.
I love that. Love that. Like the regeneration. I'm looking forward to hearing a little more about that. Um, the project that first brought you to kind of the D&AD world, the Beirut RiverLESS project. How did that
Mhm.
first come about?
So when I moved back I mean, I moved back to Lebanon not because our like projects were there, because most of our projects were elsewhere. Actually, we didn't really actually build anything in Lebanon. Like it's not there isn't that kind of like opening to sustainability and regenerative practices. Now it's starting to catch on a little bit. So we've always kind of like always pushed the boundary, and so it's been an uphill battle in Lebanon. But I moved back because I knew that this is where I could have an impact, and it could be a good base for me to work in the region and wherever I wanted, basically. So we had projects in Saudi Arabia, UAE, China, Italy. So it doesn't really matter. But what was important for me is that, you know, there's a lot of challenges here, so there were a lot of opportunities to have a positive impact. And so most of our projects in Lebanon are actually self-initiated projects. And the Beirut River project was one of them. So in 2013, I mean, long story short, but the Ministry of Energy and Water decides to install solar panels on top of the river. And this was kind of like a wake-up call, like, you know, why are you putting, you know, good solar energy, but on top of a river, and it's, you know, further adding artificiality to this river. So I got interested in studying the river. And from 2013 till basically last year, we studied the river. We did so many design exercises, community meetings, community exercises, surveys on the ground, and lots and lots and lots of different proposals. And spoke to a lot of people, presented this project at South by Southwest, in Cleveland, Pechakcha, and so many different places. And yet it never really took off. It was just such a complex project, such an intangible project. So many complexities in terms of the stakeholders, the government, which is totally inefficient. And so basically, we weren't getting anywhere. We had lots of good proposals, but not getting anywhere. And then last year, a friend of mine from Switzerland introduced me to Shumendu Sharma from India, who's one of the main proponents of the Miyawaki afforestation technique. And she introduced me to him because she thought that we would really get along. So we got on a Skype call. We had a really great call, and I invited him to come to Beirut and see if we could actually plant a Miyawaki forest in Beirut. So he ended up coming a couple of months later. So that was in March 2019. And we kind of like decided to do this project together. And so we picked a site. So I went around looking for public sites that that were basically essentially like urban landfills that no one was using. I managed to convince the municipality to allow us to experiment and to use this site as a pilot project. And I chose the site specifically because it was right next to the Beirut River. So it's literally on the banks of the river, and the river is encased in concrete. So it's on the banks of on the concrete side of the river. And the idea was that since we couldn't bring the river itself back to life, what if we could bring the forest ecosystem back into the city and back to life next to the river? And so this is how it started.
Through the process of that project, so kind of trying to clean up the river, what were your learnings?
So, I mean, first of all, just the kind of how difficult it is to convey the challenges and the problems to people and to governments and policymakers and all of that. There's a real serious lack of interest in what's going on the environmental level, and they'll always use it as an excuse. Lebanon's facing so many other issues. Like, who cares about the environment right now? Like, this is something we'll look at in a few years' time. And actually, you realize that, I mean, we are killing off our environment, which is one of our main riches in this country. Like, we used to be part of the Fertile Crescent in this area, where the country in the region with the most natural resources in terms of water and biodiversity and food and all of that. And we are slowly losing this. So we've been fighting very hard for the environment and to preserve these ecosystems, because they are one of our main riches. Like, we don't have industry in Lebanon, we don't have anything like that. So tourism is one of the highest, like the service industry and tourism industry are one of the highest earners for us in Lebanon. And basically, yeah, so for us, like, that's always been important. And given my background in terms of sustainability and regeneration and ecosystem restoration, like, it was just always kind of like, this is what we are leaning more towards. So given like all of these, let's say, riches in Lebanon, and Lebanon being it's the second most important migratory bird corridor in the world, because the birds migrating from Africa to Europe and then back to Africa. If you're not going to stand up for these ecosystems, they're just like literally gonna disappear. And other than just kind of talking and making exercise and community meetings and all of that, you actually need very tangible actions. And this is what I learned, is that the intangible actions can only take you so far, but the tangible actions, like, when we started planting the forest, this like got people involved and hooked so fast, and like, yeah, so that's where we're at.
So you started with the Beirut River Valley and looking at that, and you've kind of broadened that lens to afforestation. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yes. So basically, we were looking at. So the river was encased in concrete in 1968. So essentially, for us, the river died in 1968 because it was transformed from a natural ecosystem to a sewage infrastructure that is just channeling industrial waste, untreated sewage from 30 to 40 different municipalities upstream, trash, and all sorts of things. All the fresh water is being pumped at source by private water bottling companies that then sell us back this water. Beirut River used to be like a historical river, like since the Phoenician times and before them, and the Romans. Like the Beirut was a Roman city. I mean, is even older than the Roman city, but like the Roman city of Beirut used to get its drinking water from the Beirut River. And we had the Roman aqueduct there that was channeling this water. And none of this is preserved. The Roman bridges have collapsed into the river. They've disappeared. The Roman aqueduct is disappearing. And the river itself, like every couple of years turns completely red because it's, there's like textile factories that dump their textile dyes in the river. During the 2015 trash crisis, the government actually dumped the trash in the riverbed. And so this is kind of the state. And then to put it a bit in context, like we're on the Mediterranean Sea, so in the closed sea of the Mediterranean, and we're dumping all of this trash and pollution into the Mediterranean. So when you think of the pristine beaches of Greece and Italy and all of these places, actually we are polluting them. And we are hoping that someone will hold our government accountable for it. So with the afforestation, when we saw that the river effectively died, and the river used to provide us with ecosystem services. So it used to provide us with fresh water and food. It used to regulate temperature and pollution and floods. And it used to also like provide us with cultural services. So it used to be a meeting place of different communities from different sides of the river who would come and meet and picnic and fish and do all sorts of festivals and activities by the river. So all of this disappeared when the river was encased in concrete. It became essentially a no man's land, so the site of all sorts of abuses. So by bringing the forest ecosystem back, we're not only bringing the natural ecosystem back into the city, but we're also bringing people back to that place. So it's our kind of like side approach to getting people back to the banks of the river. And when we're getting them to the forest and they're ecstatic to see the forest and the tiny trees and biodiversity and all of that, and then, they might catch a whiff of like sewage and then they'd be curious, so what's going on? And then, you direct them just look over that concrete wall, and then they discover, and this is the river, and people don't even know that there's a river there. So this was our way of getting people back next to the river, because if you're just going to say, oh, come and look at the river, how dirty it is, I mean, yes, you'll get a few interested people, but then that's about it. But you're not getting the community, you're not getting the kids and the elderly and like so many different people there. But with the forest, it's so tangible, and it's such a sexy thing to do, and totally Instagrammable and social media friendly, and people taking selfies and all of that. So you get a lot of these people, which is great. But you also get a lot of people who get hooked. Like they come the first time, maybe, just to have fun or because their friend dragged them. But eventually they end up coming back every couple of weeks. So every 2 weeks we do maintenance sessions for the forest. And so they come back and they help us with the maintenance, and they become really attached to the area and to seeing the forest grow.
That's amazing. I love, because you talk about it as like your work in afforestation as ecological and social regeneration. I think that's such an important key element of that, which is incredible. In terms like the Miyawaki technique, like the specifics around, like I'm just thinking of some of the things that are in how you describe the kind of the context of the world and the benefits of this particular technique. I'm wondering if you could maybe share a little bit, because I think it's really unique and really interesting for people to hear.
Definitely. So the Miyawaki technique that we've adopted was developed by Dr. Akira Miyawaki in Japan, specifically at the beginning for the city of Tokyo, which was the densest city in the world. So there were really no places to plant forests. But he understood the importance of having native habitat for native species of birds and insects. He understood the importance of these forests and greenery in the city on the mental and physical health of people, of urbanites. So he developed this methodology that can be planted in any kind of environment, in any kind of ecosystem, whether a desert or a tropical environment, and in the tiniest of places. So really like even less than 1 square meter, like this, like we've planted, like 4 to 5 species of trees and shrubs in such tiny places. So then the idea is to have many of these tiny, what they call really tiny forests throughout the city wherever you can, and to have slightly larger ones in sort of what we've been doing is identifying urban landfills places that the government or the powers have deemed as like not valuable space, but we see them as, I mean, any space is inherently valuable, especially in a city like Beirut, which has so little green space. We have less than 1 square meter of green space per person, whereas the WHO recommends at least 9 square meters. So any of those spaces are valuable. And so we're empowering these communities to actually reclaim those urban landfills by planting them with these forests based on the Miyawaki technique. So, and the reason why we chose that is because the Miyawaki technique works in any kind of environment, and it relies on very strictly on native species. So we're actually returning the forest that would have existed before the city was there, using the species of trees and shrubs that would have existed there. And the way we do that is that we go, so once we've chosen the site that we want to work on, we go to the closest native mature forest. And the one we identified was in the Beirut River Valley. So we went there with a botanist and with Shubendu and Gorav, and we did our species survey. And we've surveyed 25 different species of trees and shrubs. And we also, since it's a very scientific method, we're looking at the relationships between these species. So even the ratios by which they exist. So how many pine trees versus oak trees, how many oak trees to sage shrubs, and so on and so forth. So really identifying those, we're really identifying the way that these species interact with each other, and we're identifying the density. So the density in the forest, and like the forest that we surveyed, is 4 trees and shrubs every square meter. So really, really packed and dense. And this is very different from the typical reforestation projects, which are typically, you would plant 1 tree every 4 to 5 meters. So, so our forests are 30 times denser than conventional man-made forests. 30 times denser means that they can sequester 30 times more CO2. And by returning health to the soil also is sequestering CO2. 30 times denser mean also that we are capturing 30 times more pollution, which is especially important in cities, especially important in a city like Beirut, where pollution, and in Lebanon, where Greenpeace has just ranked us in like June in their latest report from a few months ago. Lebanon has the highest death rate from air pollution in the Middle East, North Africa region. Keeping in mind that Lebanon has absolutely no heavy industry. So it's only because of cars. So there's no public transportation, lots of cars, a very old fleet of car, dirty power plants, and so dirty power generation. And since we don't have, our government has failed to provide 24 hours of electricity, we have to rely on private generators to make up for the missing hours of electricity. So again, very polluting forms of energy generation. And so for such a tiny country that has so much nature and beauty to be so polluted, it's just mind-boggling. And so these forests will play a role in abating pollution, in also dropping down the temperatures in the city, so mitigating the urban heat island effect. They will also help us with the floods that happen in the urban areas. So we get a lot of flooding in Beirut and in the other cities in Lebanon, because as with other cities around the world, most of the surfaces are paved or asphalted or concreted over, so there's nowhere for this water to go. And with the huge, massive forest fires that we had last year in Lebanon, we lost, so these were the largest forest fires that we've ever had. So we lost really big areas of tree cover. So again, then, when it rains, all of this rainfall is flowing down from the mountains, picking up, the soil, so causing lots of erosion and flooding the city. So we had our worst floods the past winter. And so the forest will actually help with that, because the forest actually becomes a sponge that is taking all of this water and then sinking it, infiltrating it into the ground, cleaning it, recharging the underground aquifers, which the city of Beirut also relies on for access to fresh water. So yeah, and then of course bringing back native habitat for the native birds and beneficial insect species that have been lost from the city because of urbanization. Which brings us back to, if we can't protect the birds in the natural areas where it's hard to, to like approach, like to stop the illegal hunting, there is absolutely no hunting in the city. So at least they can have a safe space in the city that they can cross through.
Amazing. The multiple facets of kind of environment and these threats.
A lot of co-benefits.
Environment that
I mean, it's definitely like benefiting us as humans, but on the other hand, it's benefiting the environment so much. And it's actually, I forgot to mention that researchers from ETH Zurich and then in an article picked up by The Guardian and then eventually picked up by the World Economic Forum are basically, I mean, the World Economic Forum calls the Miyawaki method of afforestation as the secret weapon against climate change. So this is a really big claim, but it comes after years and years of research and proven case studies and all of that.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit. So I've had the great privilege of getting to know you and your incredible work and team through the D&AD Impact Council's mentorship program. I know you've also been working with fantastic Marsha Meredith at ESOP. Through this mentoring process, what have you discovered?
I mean, first of all, I think what we've discovered is that, I mean, it really gave us a lot more confidence in the project that we were doing and that we were on the right track. First through the, actually like winning in the environment category, for future impact, and then winning the development grant, which, gave us money to be able to develop the methodology, to be able to do scientific research specifically on the pilot project that we've done in Beirut. So it's really given us a lot of confidence and kind of a push, and excitement. So that's for me was like the first takeaway. And then just connecting us to you and to Marsha has been a tremendous help. And I always kind of say that to you, and I say that to Marsha. We're just, I mean, I was so like, we're overwhelmed with the generosity. Like even after your mission, like your 6-month mission ended, both you and Marsha wrote to me saying that, we know that, this time has ended, but we would like to continue this, and, we would like to stay involved and would like to help you push this through. So it also kind of like, it means a lot to us that you believe so much in the project, and you've both been such a tremendous help from, like kind of guiding us and seeing like, how to pitch the project, how to advance it, how to clarify all of these ideas that we have, like I tend to talk for hours, and it's like, centering and like grounding and saying like, okay, this is the important message you need to get across, and then you can talk about the rest. So yeah, that has been great.
Well, it's been so inspiring, and like I've learned so much working with you. So it's such a phenomenal like value exchange in that. There's something about you giving. I'm learning so much from you and from what you're doing, and really encouraged for the future given the current context, especially. So, speaking of that, let's shift back to the work a bit, and we kind of talk about the setup and what that is. Let's just looking kind of at in the last year, in 2020, what have been some of the key milestones for the afforestation project?
I mean, some key milestone. One of them is that actually we couldn't really move forward with our project, so that was kind of step back. But it's okay. I think we're starting to learn that 2020 is a pretty special year, let's say. So. A lot to learn. It kind of gave us time to pause and to develop the mentorship sessions with you and with Marsha. Another milestone has been, as I said before, like winning the development grant from D&AD in 2020. We also won the IF Social Impact Prize a few months ago. We were shortlisted for the Changemakers competition by Ashoka and Vitel. So a lot of yeah, a lot of kind of recognition again that sort of made us aware that we're going in the right direction, and that even though it's an uphill battle in Lebanon, like that we are actually doing the right thing and that people are appreciating it. Another of the milestones has been the 1-year anniversary of our forest. So we've managed to, to get the forest to survive for 1 year, and it's doing really well. So we wanted to celebrate, in the forest, but given COVID, we had to scrap those plans. And we also just finally convinced another municipality, which is called Zouk Musbeh, which is probably, I think, the second most polluted city in Lebanon. So we just signed with them to plant a forest there. Just to give you a bit of context, like this is a city where we have the dirtiest power plant in Lebanon. So the site that we chose is like kind of this leftover triangular piece of land between two very busy streets, a fly bridge, the highway, like the two chimneys, of what we call the power plant of death. So the two chimneys, and then the Mediterranean Sea in the background. So a picture perfect or picture dystopic kind of place to plant forest. So this will be hopefully, so we started raising funds for this, and we're almost reaching our goal, but hopefully if we manage to reach it in the next month, we will be planting this in November. So there we'll be planting around 700 trees and shrubs. And to give you a bit of a context, like last year, so in 2019, we planted 2,470 plus trees and shrubs in Beirut and around.
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Adib. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I mean, like just D&AD, like this has been, we just applied, like, we thought we had a very slight chance, and then this has snowballed into all of these amazing opportunities. So I'm really extremely grateful for all that has happened.